go.
All right.
Okay. So two questions that I had. One was, do we have any thoughts, and maybe the answer is no because you haven't been able to get PyDoc Markdown working, about docstring formats, and is there anything we need to start thinking about there, or that would be helpful to discuss out loud? And then the other issue is really just, is the sprint, how do we feel about, I was just looking over the issues. We just have like a couple tiny issues left over. Some that I'm going to try to fit in that weren't originally part of the sprint, which we'll see if that's possible or not. Just like additional safety stuff, basically. But is there anything else we want to talk about where we could use a little bit of time today, knowing that tomorrow might take a bit longer than the hour we have for it?
I could, like the markdown stuff, my understanding was that for now we were going to have what we have and see what feedback we get from Aubrey and whoever else is interested about what improvements could be, and then discuss what they could be. Because without that, well, that was my understanding of the conclusion that we had come to. I'm feeling a little bit more together today than other days. I could spend some time digging into different PyDoc formats and at least trying to do research on the significant ways in which they differ. I think it's all just a matter of what's our parser and what do we want to be able to parse, right? Like, so,
I think so, yeah.
So I can do some research on that, but not knowing like what we're looking for because we don't know what the problems are. If you have some specific dislikes you have with what it currently looks like. I know that you didn't like the copy thing, the ability to copy code for every one of those code blocks. And we can probably remove that with some manual CSS on our part. But other than that, it wasn't at that time. I don't think we dug into, I don't think we had time to dig into, so no, no worries. But what it is that we liked and disliked about more concretely, or maybe I don't remember clearly. I've been having more trouble with memory recently, so.
Yeah, I don't. So the way I'm thinking we could use some of this time is to give that research a little bit of structure, but I don't think we have a clear. I didn't have any particular style issues. I think we want to really think about what's the functionality, right? Like, what do we want people to be able to discover when they get to our documentation page about the different interfaces and classes.
Okay.
So I think the current style just doesn't include a list of the parameters and the acceptable values. So that's something we obviously
parameters
need.
List. Well, it does show the parameters, just not in a way that we like it.
Well, it just shows parameters. So what it does is it just shows, like, we have very minimal documentation in a lot of these anyway, or not like minimal, but it's sort of like, it's just a block of text after each method or a class. And so it's not like any, because like usually if you want to, you might want to see like, and what we should eventually lean towards doing is having like, oh, like there's a method called table row and table row takes a title. Like, what is the title? Like, or like what is the title parameter? What is it supposed to do? Like, if we can get the type, like the sort of declared type for it, like where does it eventually go? And so you have like a lot of specific documentation tied to specific parameters, which just PyDoc does not allow you to have. And that's why we need either like a Google style or like a Sphinx format to have some additional structure to just the doc string that's after the method that says, here's some extra information about this parameter. here's like what it actually returns, like some extra documentation there. And then there's a lot of other things that you can't do. But yeah.
I mean, doesn't it just do, maybe it doesn't do markdown. I thought what it did was it took your doc string and it allowed it to be markdown. And then kind of you could do whatever you wanted in there with that markdown, which seems like
That's the default format
flexible
for PyDoc.
So like
But
we could just make
I don't think
a
we
list
want
of
flexible.
parameters.
I think we want consistent. I think we want consistent and
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
more
that's
than
the
flexible.
Okay. So we want something with stricter rules. Got it.
And I think we should balance some of the features that it has. Like, so for example, type annotations are new to being part of Python core, CPython at least. And if the documentation format can take advantage of the type annotations, that's nice. Clearly the default one didn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
So
hang on,
we should just be thinking about like how easy is it to use? How does it let us avoid retyping information that's a little bit redundant? And does it allow us to tell someone all the information they need to know easily in a consistent format?
Hang on, I'm writing stuff down.
With
Okay,
the
that's
copy button, it just felt a little silly because people won't need to create their own copy of our class.
True. I think it's more meant
that kind
for
of stuff doesn't really matter.
True. I think it's more meant for examples and stuff like that. Or I would hope that it would be meant for examples. So, okay, so that gives me some good direction. For more research. Cool.
One other idea, if the answer could be like, hey, you want someone else to do some research, then feed it to you. That's totally fine too, by the way. But it might be helpful to look at some popular Python libraries and see how their readthedocs.io documentation page looks, what you like and don't like about it. And then I don't know if that's part of the template or the structure of their docstring format that it expects or not. But if it is, it'll be nice to,
okay,
take advantage of that. I suppose if I'm limiting it to readthedocs.io, it's automatically going to be Sphinx. But
well, I could just look at the docs, not docs.io, but just the docs of popular Python libraries. And I suspect a lot of them will have some kind of automation. So that just may be enough to, instead of just docs.io, because that does only give us kind of a limited set, and Sphinx, of course, only Sphinx.
And then the only other thing that I could think of that's worth thinking about is like probably the place where we need the documentation the most is for the AL document class. So thinking about like how do we express information you would have wanted to be able to access about the AL document class, or that you had to format and put into a page already. What would make that easy to access and read?
Say again.
It just feels like the exemplar class that we want to improve documentation for is the AL document class.
Mm-hmm.
The one that is, it invented its own paradigm for doing this stuff. So people really need to be able to read the documentation and understand what it is.
Okay.
We have a lot more stuff, but not all of it needs to be well documented because people don't interact with it.
Yeah.
Except running the code and like the front end.
Yeah. Yeah, you faded out a little, but I think I got the gist. Yep, we can focus on the AL document class for sure. I think it would be useful for to have the internal documentation as well for we who are developing especially as things evolve and change. But yeah.
Totally agree.
Totally
Yeah.
agree. Okay, cool. All right. Very good direction there. Thank you. What was the other question? You had another question that you thought we might be able to?
Oh, the only other thing was just thinking ahead for the sprint review we're going to do tomorrow. Bryce, it looks like you had a PR that you want to get into this sprint. I think I'm going to try to add a little bit more error handling for PDFs that are invalid and try to get that one in.
Okay.
Anything else people want to talk about for tomorrow? Or, Bryce, do you want to go into a little bit more talking about your PR with the bump version stuff?
Oh, the bump version stuff. Okay. I mean, not really. It was just more of the, like, a lot, like the same stuff that I talked about when we last talked about it, but just cleaner with a lot more error handling and a dry run functionality, so you can see what it's going to do and not actually do it, which is
nice,
which is necessary because there's a lot of like just weird stuff. And I wasn't able to get it like clean in terms of, oh, if everything works, then like push and commit, I'll roll back. It just doesn't, nothing really works like that. So could not get that, but like you can still like try and do a dry run. But I mean, there's not like besides just going through like the actual code, there's not much really more to do there. And there wasn't really anything, at least for me, there wasn't really anything else I was like chomping at the bit to get in. I think most of the other stuff I looked at was like good and already has a PR out. So yeah.
Okay.
Okay, great. I guess actually one other thing to raise, just because we need to talk about it, but we can talk about it again tomorrow, of course, is I think we keep talking about renaming the package. I think maybe we should do that tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
It'll involve touching a bunch of things, mostly just tracking down where people have linked to the old version. So maybe probably we should add a redirect. But and then I did a little bit of cleanup. There's a PR now that deletes 2 files that were not used. So I just think that kind of cleanup stuff is good to get in, because when we end the sprint, we can encourage people to do a new poll into the program, have a clean base for any changes they're working on. So yeah, I don't know if other people have thoughts about that, if that feels like a good idea, bad idea. It might just be a heads up to everybody if it feels okay.
Yeah.
No, it sounds good to me. Things like that are always good to do.
Okay. Anything too technical for the management call or for stand-up that people wanted to talk about and use 20 minutes that we have on the books for?
Probably, but nothing that I prepared for or put on a list.
That's fair. Yeah, it's okay for us to be done, for sure.
Okay. Did we want to do any stand-up stuff, or is everybody basically reported their stand-up stuff?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I've reported my stand-up.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I think he said he already has.
Okay,
so
I heard it as had it. My bad.
it's the wind. Yes.
Sorry about that.
The wind speaking for him. I'd love to troubleshoot the freaking PyDoc markdown generation path, whatever, but that is very, very technical.
The only thing I can think of is Python versions. What are you just using?
It might be Python versions, but it just, like, when I install it and I say, PyDoc markdown version, it says it's not there, can't find it. When I do which PyDoc markdown, it has no result. Like it has like, I looked up something that had me print paths and it has 2 different paths. And there's something going on with my Python version that there is some kind of mismatch between some config files somewhere where I just can't get rid of this zombie like 2 point whatever Python version. But
I think that Mac OS 10 relies on Python 2.7.
oh, really?
You might just want to make like a new virtual N for Python 3.
Yeah, do all your stuff.
Every time?
Yeah.
I think it's part of the OS.
Yeah, Mac
But I
is
can also
notorious.
just use Python.
Ubuntu defaults to like pointing Python to Python 2 and then Python 3 for Python 3. Like, I don't know if that's another option you have.
Well, I can
Python
use
3 and
Python
every
3.
time.
I can use Python 3 just fine, but how do I use Python 3? I can't do a Python 3 PyDoc markdown, can I? Because you're just supposed to run the
Yeah.
command PyDoc markdown.
Just do Python 3-M and then point to the path of the file.
And by path of the file, if it's an installed file, you can generally just write.
I can write Python 3. I can write the command Python 3 and be able to run stuff with Python 3, but I thought the command for PyDoc markdown was PyDoc markdown, not Python 3 PyDoc markdown.
But that's all
right.
it's doing.
I think you might
under
need
the
to alias it. Yeah, like
Oh, that was an alias for it?
there's probably a shell script, or maybe they have a bang at the top of the Python file. It's one of those two.
Okay, well, I will try to, you know what? I'll try to frickin'.
To find the file, to see where it's installed, well, definitely you want to use Python 3 version of PyDoc Markdown, and there may be a version for each, so I would make sure you do a pip3 install.
It
PyDoc
says,
Markdown, and not
it
pip
said,
install.
can't open file PyDoc markdown, no such file or directory.
So you'll need to find the full path. What I do for that is just to find -name.
Find dash
It's been a little while
PyDoc.
since I used the Mac command line, but
I think there's
find
an
-name and then the name of the file that you're trying to find.
dash name. No, I think there was something, and I think I found it previously up here. There's a special command, and I found it, and then I track it down, and then I do what with it?
Python -m and then the full path to the file.
Python 3 dash,
-m.
and then and I just do that every time I want to run PyDoc markdown.
Well, I would add an alias to your .bash alias.
Okay.
Maybe you have Bryce might have a better solution, but that's what I would do.
I don't. That's unless the better solution would be to figure out what is broken in your Python stuff. But
I would love
I've
to
tried
do that.
I've tried that before on Macs and other places, and it's sometimes just not worth it. And
Well, good to know it's not just me who has given up on it many, many times. Okay. Good.
just use virtual M's all the time.
Then I have to learn how to use the virtual end.
You know how to use a virtual M. It's you just source. It sits. It's like the same. You just have one per project. It sits in the project directory. You source it every time you use it.
But then if I mean, do I git ignore it? And then just if I reclone it, I have to remember everything and download it. And
you can save it as requirements generally. Like you can run pip freeze and it spits out everything that like you've included in that virtual env, and then you can just read pip install -r that file that you like pip froze. There are ways to do,
but you have to do the virtual environment thing that doesn't, like, there's a set of commands. It's not just one command to start up a virtual environment and do all that stuff.
No, there's one command. It's like
What?
make
It
VM.
kind of is, because it's just a script that it installs. You have to source.
Yeah, so there are, I mean, don't get me wrong, it is a lot more complicated, but I've been using it pretty consistently, and like I haven't needed to know anything else besides create your virtual env, which I believe off the top of my head is like Python 3-m venv, and then just the name of like the folder that all of this virtual env is going to live in. And then every time you want to use it, you source that folder /bin/activate, and then you have your correct pip environment and everything.
Maybe we can set it up together sometime.
Maybe, yeah.
Okay.
It does require like at least some minimal parts of Python to work to set up, but like, which, yeah, like if your Python is beyond repair on your machine, I don't know what to do. But
Yeah. God. I have to remember that variation, I don't know, in the market. Like, we don't want monoliths. It's so painful not to have monoliths, but like, it's better, but it's so painful. Okay. Cool. And other than that is just, where is the testing framework going to go next? And hopefully, if y'all have thoughts, that's good. I think I'm leaning towards just working on the more flexible stuff right now and thinking more about what the fourth column is going to look like and what the architecture is going to look like, regardless of whether fourth column means just another word in, the wording of a step, or maybe it should be that fourth piece of data. So, and trying to think about maybe reducing by one column by adding some complexity to true and false values. That's probably, there's not enough time to talk about. Never mind, because that won't make any sense to anyone except me. But would love like some thinking through that logic and what are the pitfalls that's going to run into. But at some point, I'd love to have whoever is interested in understanding how this works, like just walking through the code and, having people ask questions as we go to better understand it, then maybe base some documentation off of it. But I know that is, I don't really know how invested which people are in this testing framework. So if it's just me, then, then there's not much, then obviously, other people aren't gonna look at it. But if other people find the testing framework a valuable idea, then, it'd be good to have more people able to work with it than just me, sustainability wise. Okay, that's where I'm at. Thumbs up from Bryce. Invisible thumbs up from Quentin, I assume. And
that's all.